Hello, and welcome to the return of the ID update. It's like cheering sounds and stuff going on everywhere now. I know. I should try and use the React. Really, let's go with that. Hey, there you go.
Ooh,
Cheering sounds.
intense.
Uh, Thank you for joining us this evening. With everything's changed. Everything has changed. New format, new topics, and of course, a new co-host. Welcome to the ID update. Although you did one before, actually, Heidi, didn't you? You stepped in
I
as a
did. I did a
host.
substitute one. Yeah.
So, well, this is very exciting. I say all new, all changed. Let's not waste any time. Please do throughout the show get involved in the chat. Let us know that this is working more than anything else, and that you are seeing and hearing us, which is always nice to check. When it's not just my systems telling us we are. But let's jump into the first bit of our new format, which is, as per all good television news channels, top stories.
Yeah.
Um, our first top story today: demand soars for human skills in the age of AI. Cornerstone has released the 2024 State of the Skills Economy report, and depending on what you are hoping for, it's either really good news or really bad news, unsurprisingly. The really good or really bad news, again, depending on what you're putting your money behind, is that we are seeing more jobs advertised around AI and data and machine learning, but we are also seeing a corresponding increase in demand for what you might call soft skills, the ability to communicate effectively, to assess risks, and take responsible decisions. Who knew, right, that they might go hand in hand as technology slowly takes over, as we become ever so slightly more concerned with the prospect of Skynet not just being part of a film. So, if you are interested in the report, I will drop a link to where you can get access to it and download it for yourself. But one of the things, or one of the little statements that I found most interesting within it, was the fact that 87% of executives globally already report skills gaps in their workforce or expect them within the next few years. That's a really high number.
That is a really high number. That's hmm.
like, there's always going to be skill gaps, of course there are. But then when you also look at the fact that the share of demand for remote or flexible work has seen a 40% increase. Now,
Ooh, I like that.
that's not universal, interestingly. It is heavily based in the Western world.
Of course.
And interestingly, pretty much the further east you travel, the more that goes down. Um, but the global share of demand in all emerging work trends, this is the biggest, followed by employee experience, which is a bit
Hmm.
nebulous. I think it groups together a lots of stuff.
Interesting.
Um, Third is talent development. So your opportunity to learn and work, third place now. That used to be a solid first place. And coming in last, but registering, is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace,
Oof.
which is interesting.
Fantastic.
And my only thought when I saw that was, it's very important to everyone till it comes to getting a job. And then people suddenly start rating it in their own instance of much lower. And that's telling. It is interesting, though, that since 2020, it has increased by 248%. So that's,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think, the silver lining, that it is at least,
Sure.
except the others have all gone up as well. But like the talent one has gone up by 53%. The the top one, the remote work requirement, has gone up 39%. So the fact that that is at least growing at 248% indicates that it might overtake.
I guess
Um,
my issue is that DEI and employee experience are separate.
yeah, it's interesting, and I'm not sure if they provide a detailed breakdown of why. Not that I can see in the report.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
yes.
Yeah, because I would
The
think that all of that would be important to the employee experience, but what do I know?
Yeah, well, you would. This to me, 'cause that's kind of my observation was the fact that remote work, diversity, equity, inclusion, talent development, all of that to me, you combine those to get to employee experience, surely. Plus, salary, which I think if it was included would be the top of all of these. Just being realistic.
Oh, yeah,
What
absolutely.
job? Money.
Right.
Probably.
Pizza oh, you forgot second to pizza parties.
Oh, obviously. Oh,
Mhm.
naturally
Yeah,
second to
yeah,
pizza parties.
yeah.
But the one thing, and I haven't gone through the whole report yet, the one thing they do break down in the bit that I haven't fully read through yet is they go through the impact of socio-economic forces on skills requirements and development. That's really interesting. The couple of graphs that I have sort of peeked at in there really highlight how, especially the kind of, tech, it's all about tech, it's all about tech. And you think, not everywhere in the world it's not. Um, and there's
Sure.
lots of reasons, but I think they dive into some very interesting stuff. They take a very interesting look at generational difference in these skill sets as well, which I think is going to be
Interest
upsetting for any young people that think you've got a lock on these skills and that by being able to use it, you're definitely going to be fine. No, I know. Today I was sent a TikTok. I have to be sent a TikTok to watch a TikTok. That's how that works. But it was a whole thing about how boomers not being able to use technology. So do you mean the generation that put a computer in every home? Yeah, not a clue about technology. It's not going to
right?
be like that anymore. You know, you've not got a lock on those skills, I'm afraid.
Although I feel like the older I get, the less I know about technology. There is a weird correlation that is scary the older I get that I really thought that our generation would avoid since we're kind of like strangely on the fence of not being digital natives, but not
Hmm.
being like having our full school be before the internet, you know?
But do you find that it's useful technology? 'Cause I think that's often the interesting thing. It's like, it's a bit like I prefer typing on a keyboard, but lots of people who are maybe just a little bit younger much prefer typing on touchscreens. I actually feel like I've got the advantage there because when you get into the world of
Yeah.
work, you're getting given a keyboard, whether you like it or not. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's the truth of a lot of technology. 'Cause there's also the element of when I look at my sisters who are over a decade younger than me, technology is great for them as long as it works, but they've never had technology not just work. So the idea of troubleshooting
Oh,
processes are completely
interesting.
absent from what they consider to be using technology. Whereas I spent 6 hours getting BattleNet to work when it was new on PCs, so I could chat to people while we were trying to blow up aliens. That was just part of using a computer.
Oh, yeah, or, like, getting rid of viruses, like, do
Yeah,
you remember just, like, locking like, my dad was like, "You're the one who did this, you figure out how to get rid of it," and it was on the desktop that was in our living room in one of those big hutches, right?
absolutely. And I feel like it's a very different relationship with technology now. I feel like it's also no one masters the technology anymore. You just experience it. It happens around you. Even if you're a
Yeah.
prolific user of it, you're not really that involved. And I think again, there's this split between being very comfortable with TikTok, Instagram, whatever, but also even just I don't know, embrace of AI. Let's say AI is kind of the technology we're hyper focused on right now. And is there really that much of a difference between someone using ChatGPT generationally? Not really. Maybe
Yeah.
when they started using it, but once you're there, there's not that much of a science to it, really. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, my dad, who is a quite young boomer, he's on the younger end of it, um, was using ChatGPT regularly for work to make the tone of his emails sound friendlier, which is fantastic, right? Like, what a great, like, he
Hey,
was told that he was a little too confrontational. So he was like, all right, well, I'll use ChatGPT to make me sound less confrontational. Like, what a good move on his part, too, right? To just take that initiative.
and interestingly, isn't it interesting that that is arguably a very human-centric and responsible use of that piece of technology?
Right?
Like,
Exactly.
so you mean he
Yeah.
didn't just dump all his company's IP into it and ask it to do his job for him? Incredible.
Or make some courses. I need 8 courses stat on
This,
all of these things.
and I suspect, and this is going to be a broad generalization, and I include my own group of people in this. I feel like those of us on the younger end are actually more likely to fall foul of that stuff, and especially when that is marketed as something you can do. I think we are more likely to do it than perhaps an older generation who is going to look at it and go, by default, they don't necessarily just want to embrace technology for the sake of it. So their
Sure.
question starts with, how does this help? What does this fix for me? Whereas we're
Yeah.
almost having to train ourselves to think like that.
Yeah, that's a really
You
good. I think part of it is age and part of it is just being in the corporate world and just being used to being like given a tool. Like, here's the tool, use it.
yeah,
Figure it out.
this is it. So yeah, maybe not as black and white as people have sometimes communicated or expected. Um, so next top story, Heidi, over to you.
Yes. So the question that keeps coming up that I keep seeing everywhere is, will AI replace instructional designers? Will AI take my job? Will it ruin my team? Will it, you know, any form of this question, right? And Dr. Philippa Hardman did this really cool experiment. I don't know if you've seen too much of it, Tom, but she did this very cool experiment. How close is AI to taking over the role of the instructional designer? So, what she did was she looked at 3 different ID tasks and she had 3 colleagues go ahead and do these tasks. One person was an experienced instructional designer who did not use any AI. One was a novice colleague who wasn't an instructional designer and used AI to help do instructional design tasks. And then the third was an experienced instructional designer who used AI to help with, but ultimately guided those tasks, right? And for the 3 tasks were writing learning objectives, selecting an instructional strategy, and creating a course outline. And across the board, guess who performed the worst? It was the
Oh,
person who's not the ID, right? No. Nope. It was the experienced instructional designer who is not using AI in all 3 tests, right? And my favorite part is this, is what some of the people said about this instructional designer, because they thought it was AI, right? They thought it was bad AI. And so they said things like, this is for specifically for the learning objectives one. These look more like a table of contents rather than learning objectives, too wordy, too many concepts per objective, not using measurable language like understand, they don't follow blooms, the outcomes aren't smart, capital SMART. It feels like initial AI wrote this and has maybe had some human editing, right? And with the instructional strategy, very similar feedback, right? Let me see if I can find that one. Just terrible. This strategy is every learner's nightmare, they said about the instructional designer's strategy. Sounds boring and ineffective. Old school thinking was another phrase used. So this poor instructional designer got dragged in this experiment, but scored significantly lower than the others across the board, right? And then the instructional designer who used AI to help them scored the best in all the different experiments, right? Now, granted, and I'm sure Dr. Phil knows this herself, like that she would not be submitting this to a scholarly journal. Like, this is a sample size of 3, right? I would love to see what this looks like on a larger scale.
mm,
But what's interesting to me is this idea that even the novice using AI could do better than the instructional designer. And that's where we really need to focus this conversation, because I think the answer to the question, can AI replace instructional designers, is it depends. What kind of instructional designer are you, right? Because I think there's two very distinct kind of growing factions in L&D right now, right? There are the multifaceted L&D pros, and whatever facet that is, it's I facilitate and do instructional design, or I do the needs analysis and I do the design and I do the selection of the solution. And, they're bringing in multiple skills, right? And then there's the ID who is, and I'm not just making this up. Like, there are job descriptions that are catered to this specific kind of ID that I just saw yesterday, where it's like, we just want you to use an authoring tool, get something into your inbox, a slide deck, a PDF, whatever, and turn it into courseware and do it as fast as you can. And that's where I think AI could replace those instructional designers who don't have those multifaceted skills, those human skills that we're talking about that are so critical. I think those are the people who should be worried.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I don't find this. I find it very interesting. Don't necessarily find it surprising, 'cause you think about AI is billed as creating a high floor and a low ceiling, right? It's never going to beat the best of anyone at anything, but it's going to be
Sure.
a lot better than most people are at most things.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's also a bit of a wake up call for us as an industry. Like, we'd never like to say it, and I think whenever someone does say it, everyone goes, "Oh, that's a bit unfair." Statistically speaking, a lot of people are bad at their jobs. That is true in every industry, including ours. And at some point, all of
Yes.
us have probably been bad at what we do. Like, I know
Oh,
I have.
absolutely. I know I have. Let's come on. Sometimes I even share my first ever storyline project to make people feel better.
This is it. Like, I was thinking back not long ago, someone else about your first L&D role. And I thought back to some of the stuff that I was doing, and I was sitting there running like workshops on growth mindset and stuff like this, and thinking, oh my God, I was part of the problem for a long time. And we will all have those bits. But I think
Yeah.
hopefully, I think what AI will do is maybe catch us when we start, when we're about to make one of those mistakes. Because, like,
Sure.
my go-to thing is have an argument with an AI before doing anything that you're not like, okay, this is just the obvious next step. Tell the AI what you're thinking of doing in the context, and ask it to, you know, take an opposite field to you. You might change nothing, but it's quite helpful, you know.
Sure. Or, I've been working on an evaluation framework for L&D
Ooh.
that's just more not level based. And this is something I've just like been creating myself based on my experience and like what I've read over the years and my PhD program and everything. But like, I just wasn't feeling it. I threw it into Chat GPT and said, give me suggestions. How can I build this and make it a little bit more robust, a little bit more comprehensive? And it came up with some shitty suggestions and some really good ones. And then I was able to use the good ones and make it better, right? And that's where we have opportunity. And I think the other thing to remember is that AI can help us do the shit we don't like about ID, right? What is your least favorite thing to do? Because it may surprise you as an English lit major, but I despise writing introductions, summaries, course descriptions. Oh my gosh, I would rather go to the dentist all day. So that's where I just say, here's the objectives. Give me a 2-sentence summary of this. And then, there you are.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how not only what happens technologically, but how people react to it. because I'm predicting I don't know, I feel like some people will view it and be like, right, this is a challenge about how I work, time to evolve, time to adapt, find ways of utilizing this. And there will be others whose response to that research will be perhaps more emotionally driven, um, around this is bad because insert, self-protective reason here.
Of
Um,
course.
which is kind of expected and human and fine. But I also think that for a long time we've preached change is good and everyone should adapt and you should get better at your role. And now it's our turn. Um, we don't just get to dish it out. This time we've got to take it.
And see,
Um,
that's the irony for me. And this is the part that like I still cannot wrap my head around logically, is that learning is a process of changing your brain in some way, right? Like whether it is expanding your knowledge or your consciousness or your awareness, or relearning something, learning something that you were doing something incorrect and having to correct that, or whatever learning is, it's the process of changing your brain and your behavior in some way. Like that's our goal, but we can't be bothered to do it ourselves.
it's,
Okay.
it's a funny space we inhabit, isn't it? So let's go on to our next top story. This is part top story, part shameless plug. Shameless plug, that is, for LN Connect 2024, at which me and Heidi will be recording a live podcast.
Can you believe it?
It's super exciting.
It'll be my first time in Europe ever in my entire life.
So naturally, you're coming to record an L&D podcast. Why else would you
Exactly.
fly all that way?
Right. What else would I do? Go to the
I mean,
Eiffel Tower? Come on.
trust me, the inside of our conference room will be far more spectacular than the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. Perfect.
St. Paul's is just around the corner. Actually, you can see it as you exit the
Oh,
building. It is
perfect.
quite nice.
There you go.
But Connect is sort of setting up to be a phenomenal day. Obviously, I'm biased. I think our session is going to be amazing, but the whole day is going to be fantastic. We have two phenomenal keynotes in the form of Kara North and Laura Overton. We've then got sponsors like Mass Marketing. So Hannah will be there giving a phenomenal talk as well. We've got Make Real, who do kind of VR and game-based learning. We've got L&D Free Spirits, which is a community group specially for freelance L&D professionals, which is really cool and kind of talks about, yes, L&D, but also the reality of like a webinar this week was, how do I get a mortgage as a freelancer? Like,
Yes.
that's a cool
Good
topic.
stuff.
So yeah, real great set of days. We've got 4 debates throughout the event as well, where you'll basically watch us put people on stage and poke them with a stick till they argue about a topic of our choice. And rapid talks from some network members, where I think there's 6 of them, and they're just going to have 5 minutes to
Love
talk.
it.
So a real good mixed day. Plus there are drinks at the end. If you are in the UK and you'd like to come along, please do come along. It's really well priced as an event. The Learning Network is a community interest organisation, so no one's making any money off the back of it. It only has to break even. So it's well worth coming along to if you're in the area. Or if you're not, like Heidi, you can fly halfway around the world and come along. It's well worth.
Exactly. Yeah.
If
You have
nothing else,
miles sitting there, just use them.
you can come and get a sticker. Look at that.
Woo,
That's
yay.
worth the flight just by itself.
Exactly. That's why I'm going, just to get the sticker.
Absolutely. So shameless plug over, back to our next top story, which is with you, Heidi.
Okay, so this isn't actually a news story. This is just something I continue to see over and over and over in the special hell that is the instructional design subreddit. If you have ventured there, you are brave, first of all. If you have commented there, you are even braver. I've stopped. I actually deleted a comment recently because of how hotly someone came after me. But every post that I see where someone is considering joining L&D, instructional design, facilitation, and coming from all over, not just educators. We definitely have an educator to ID funnel. But people coming from marketing or video production are like, hey, this seems like a pretty cool field. How do I get started? How do I get in? And immediately people are like, this field is oversaturated. We do not want you here. You should not even do this. I've been looking for a job for 27,000 months and have not found a single thing. And you will be a fool if you try to enter this field right now because it is so oversaturated. Go somewhere else is the message, right? Go somewhere else, right? First of all, when I Googled, is the field of learning and development oversaturated? All I found were like a couple of LinkedIn posts from people saying that it wasn't. The data, there is none. So this is, guess what? A baseless claim, right? That the field is oversaturated.
No.
I know. Go figure. Where people can say whatever they want under the veil of anonymity, they would make such claims. But yes, so people are getting jobs in L&D. People are getting jobs every day in L&D. And yeah, maybe full-time work is different. Maybe, listen, the economy in the United States is corporate economy is pretty tough right now. It's hard to get a full-time job if you've been laid off. There's a lot of layoffs happening, but it's not just L&D. It's not just L&D.
And I think that's interesting because certainly, like, if I go onto a jobs board, there's no shortage of jobs. And that's not always the easiest way of measuring it. I get that because some businesses are a little bit liberal in how they decide to advertise jobs. You can go through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews and then they go, oh, actually, we decided not to hire for this position after all. That does happen. However, I think the suggestion that it's saturated it just doesn't make sense. Like, how can it be saturated and every L&D professional I know never have enough time? So many that I speak to have vacancies on their team.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I just can't fill these spaces. And I feel like there's kind of a couple of problems to my mind. One I posted about earlier this week and actually got a message about how unhelpful it was. It was interesting. Because I feel like there's this weird, especially on social media, mentality of if you interview for a job and don't get it, the issue is with them. It can't possibly be that you actually weren't good enough for the role that you interviewed for because we're all amazing. So that's probably not helping your chances very much. That attitude of I refuse to reflect on feedback that I am probably not even asking for, let alone being given. And then throwing my toys out of the pram publicly when I don't get a job. So that will indeed render you not just unemployed, but unemployable. Just
right. Well, I have a friend who calls this green banner behavior. And it's nothing against the people who use the open to work green banner. It is a statement about the people who are perpetually looking for a job for a very long time, who have that mentality that you're describing, Tom, where it's like, listen, I was looking for work for months, and I know other people have been looking for work for months. I'm not saying that anyone who doesn't find a job within 3 months fits this. What I'm saying is this kind of tone that it's like, why won't someone take a chance on me? That like desperate to the resentful, where it's like, I have all these things to offer and I'm so great and wonderful, and these people are fools because they're not hiring me. That kind of, like you said, it's that you're the problem, not me mentality.
And thing is, it's like you may well actually be every bit as incredible as you think you are, but maybe 10 other people were as well.
Sure.
Like, and I feel like part of this is it's easier to see when you are freelance or a small business owner, because you tend to have slightly more visibility of not just why you didn't get it, but actually who did, because we run in small circles, right?
Yeah.
And I had this recently, and this was my point on the post. It was that, I very recently, my business, we put in a pitch for a substantial contract, went through several rounds of pitching and conversation, and then didn't get it. And I happened to end up in a chat in the pub with someone who did get it. And it became very obvious to me that we had missed something really fundamental in one of our pitches. And it was a really good learning opportunity for us. And now I'm confident that if the same sort of thing came up, we would have a stronger pitch because of it.
Sure.
But without that willingness to consider that, we would just continue to not secure that kind of work because we were overlooking something because we were not that familiar with the space. But
Sure.
then the flip side of it, I think, does come from businesses that are still putting some pretty crazy requests in their job descriptions.
Oh yeah. The process backwards and forwards is messed up, right? And again, it's not just our industry, it's hiring practices in general that have these. I mean, you can still find instructional design job postings that talk about Flash. That should tell you everything you need to know about job postings and like the job responsibilities. Like it's very possible that you're not an order taker instructional designer and that's what they wanted. It's very possible that they don't want someone who's going to challenge them and ask questions and, make it about being innovative. They just want a yes person, right? And I've encountered that as well, like even in freelance work where they're like, contractor, be quiet and just do what we pay you to do, and so then I don't renew those contracts and, you live and learn. And sometimes it's just not a good fit, you know, but a lot of times too, I've met a lot of L&D managers who have never been on an L&D team, and it's a problem. This is a problem where they've come from somewhere else in HR, or they've come from tech writing, or knowledge management, or marketing or product, and they get put in charge of people with L&D titles. And it's not always a problem because some are willing to learn, right? Some are willing to learn the roles and some are willing to pay attention and understand what their people are doing. But for a lot of them, it's square peg round hole, right? Like I've had bosses certifying me in Scrum so that I can run my ID process like an agile sprint team because they came from web development and tech writing. And I'm like, that's just not how we work in here. So I think you're right. Like the problem's twofold, but the only thing that we can do is worry about our piece of it. Like we're not going to change US hiring practices over here, right? Like we're not. But what we can do is better prepare ourselves to know exactly the kinds of roles we want so that we can stop kind of finding these bad fits.
Absolutely. And I think that's great. Funnily enough, I was at this wonderful community meetup earlier today. I forget what the name of the community was, though. It was the kind of, I think it might have been called Really Useful, actually. I think that might have been what it was called.
No idea.
That was clunky segued.
It's fantastic. It's great. It's great.
But anyway, it was Heidi's new community's first meetup. And it was amazing how quickly the conversation turned to people who were looking for work.
Yeah.
And the one thing that really struck me about the conversation was they were having a conversation that I don't think is had enough, which is what is going to make you stand out
Mm.
and what role specifically are you looking for? Because L&D is not one big group of the same job. Like working in L&D is a very broad term. Are you going to
Oh
be an
yeah.
LMS administrator? Are you going to be an instructional designer? Are you going to be a facilitator? Are you going to be some mix of all three? Because that's not uncommon. Or are you, with almost no experience, trying to be a team manager or a senior position? Or which sound when you say it, you go, "Oh, well, who would do that?" The last role I hired for turns out a lot of people. Um,
Absolutely. Especially if they've held leadership positions in other areas like higher
mm,
ed leadership and like superintendents, right? Think that they're automatically fast tracked to be director of L&D for a corporate company. And I
yeah,
think there's coming from speaking as a former and now again, higher ed professor, there's a difference between higher ed and corporate. There's a difference between higher ed ID and corporate ID. There's a difference between teaching K through 12 and doing corporate instructional design. And the people who refuse to acknowledge that, who say, no, 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 I'm good enough as is. I don't need any upskilling. I don't need any reskilling. That's why you're not getting hired. It's because when I see that you're not acknowledging the gap, that tells me as a hiring manager that you don't understand that there's a difference. And that's a problem for me. If you understand that there's a difference and you're saying, I'm not quite there yet, totally different conversation, completely different conversation, because that's the type of self-awareness that I need on my team. I can't have people that are completely self-unaware joining my team and thinking that they're fantastic at everything they do, you know?
You're exactly right. Um, so on that note, let me take us to what I think might possibly be our last or possibly last two top stories for this episode. Um, which is the world's first Learning Ops certification program, which sounds very grand and exciting. I'm going to ignore some of the marketing terms, including
Sure.
words like revolutionizing the L&D space or a new era for talent and development.
Oh,
Hate that kind
ooh,
of stuff.
okay.
So let's put that to one side because the actual program looks fantastic. I'm going to drop a link into the chat. Now, to be clear, this is not an actual endorsement or a recommendation because I've not been on the program, so I cannot recommend it. But what
Sure.
struck me is that this looks disturbingly like a business program. And
Mm.
we're forever saying we lack business skills. We don't. Every course you go on goes, let's talk about learning objectives and how cognition works, and all the which is all great and really important when you are a practitioner. But when you become a leader in the space, or you want to become a leader in the space, it is very difficult to secure the wider business skills. Now, the only other program I've seen beside this is the CLO 100 program run by Kathy Hoy and Robert Wagner here in the UK. And it looks fantastic. Again, I've not been on it, but I'm involved with their community, and it's a phenomenal space, and their course looks amazing. This one caught my eye largely because of this focus on learning operations, the idea that learning is an
Mhm.
operational business unit and not a weird, fluffy sideline area. And when you look at kind of the curriculum outlines, it's understanding learning operations data baselines, navigating organizational culture and politics, selecting
Ooh.
effective L&D operating model. These are the things that practitioners don't really even contemplate or perceive as frustrating things that they have to like fight through. Whole sections on strategy, and forming alliances within organizations, understanding learning ops processes, capacity planning, budget management, project management. We kind of already do a lot of that. Um, there are some bits that focus on learning solutions, but then it's talking more about knowledge management and autonomous learning materials and inclusivity in L&D. There's an entire section of the course on ROI and learning measurement. Like,
Fantastic.
this is kind of a lot of the stuff that I feel is often missing when we look at kind of anything aimed at L&D. And it's the
Sure.
reason I see a lot of people who get to a certain point and they go, I now basically need to do an MBA, not an L&D course. I need to go and do a business course. And this feels like it might kind of sit in a good space. And the thing that really surprised me is like it's less than $1,000 US.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not a subscription. You're not buying in forever. Just what you just buy it.
One-time
Which
price. Yeah.
this is it now. And I'm not going to say, hey, that's cheap, I'll take five. But if you're, if you're in a position of thinking either I'm in a leadership position and feel like I'm not doing everything I could, or you want to move into that position, that's not an unreasonable amount of money to be looking to spend.
No.
Right?
Yeah. Or if you have like extra professional development funds for the
Yeah,
year, this is the time, right? Like we're coming into the fourth quarter. If you haven't used that money yet, find good things. And I often hear people trying to find L&D adjacent certifications, right? Like
exactly.
people are always getting like their PMP and things like that.
Yeah,
And it's just for new people. Like if you're established and you've decided that that's what you need because that's a skill gap for you, cool. But I find a lot of aspiring people just are trying to like collect these certifications, and it just feels unwieldy and not focused enough. Whereas this seems to have a lot more value than like a PMP or a UX UI certificate, or the cousins to L&D.
This is it. It just feels that bit focused. And some of the net, like, I'm not a big fan of like buy on the name, because how closely really related are they? And is a
Sure.
name that's been in the industry 30 years really, like, that's cool, but are they actually up to date in their practice, or are they still saying what they said 25 years ago? That kind of stuff. But interestingly, a lot of the people who have been involved, at least according to the website, that's all I can go on at this point, in developing and designing this, are people who have, or either are, or have very recently been in senior L&D positions,
Hmm.
CLOs of large organizations, that kind of thing. So when you look at the bottom, they actually give you a full list of instructors.
Yeah, it's
And
important.
I quite like that, because it's quite nice to be able to dig in. And when you see people like Megan Torrance, Kevin Yates, these people, for me, it's like, okay, well, they're pretty, they know their stuff. They're
Yeah,
maybe very specific areas, but they've demonstrated pretty broadly that they do know what they're talking about. You know,
absolutely.
um, and I like that. Nothing seems too hidden. Like Debbie Richards is in there; she does like fantastic stuff.
Debbie Richards is
Um,
great. Yeah.
so yeah, you kind of get a feel very quickly of, this is a group of people who, those of whom I recognise, know their stuff. Those who don't are not working in L&D in dinky little organisations, or organisations known for being terrible. They're from a lot of organisations that, whether you know them or not, you kind of go, oh, actually, yeah, their reputation's pretty interesting, even if not like
Yeah,
perfect when it comes to different things. Like
sure.
McDonald's is that exact thing for me. Like, McDonald's has some very questionable elements of its overall business,
Of
but
course. Yeah.
actually, certainly in the UK, their focus on internal training and progression and succession planning is like incredibly forward looking compared to most organizations, especially organizations that, let's face it, very few school kids go, do you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to work in McDonald's. But
Yeah.
that's almost a
Hmm.
threat job. If you don't work hard, you'll end up working in McDonald's. But they've
Right.
managed to turn that into a, well, actually, that could be quite a good start of entering the world of work, especially if you don't
Yeah.
have formal qualifications, because we will train you up to become a manager, including finance training, and then maybe you can go and work in the finance department. And they've got this really strong internal ethos, which, again, is just very interesting, and I think lacking in even businesses that would probably consider themselves superior to working in McDonald's in many ways,
Sure.
let's say,
Sure.
but then utterly fail to develop their internal talent, which is a weird thing, really.
Right. Which happens a lot.
So yeah, more of a just kind of, isn't it interesting that we're
Yeah.
starting to see more courses aimed at that group of people,
I like
and
it.
quite
Yeah.
exciting, I think.
I think that's good.
So does that bring us to the end of top stories, or is
That
there?
does.
Okay, in which case, and you might be able to guess, there's an element missing from this show, and that is the intro music and little video, and little spaces between these as we move into our next segment, Jargon Buster.
Yes. So today we are going to talk about cognitive load theory. Now, cognitive load theory posits that the working memory has limited capacity, and instructional design must manage intrinsic, extraneous, and germane loads to optimize learning. By minimizing unnecessary cognitive load and emphasizing schema construction, learners can effectively process and retain new information. That's the TLDR from cognitive load theory.
So basically, don't overload people's brains with too much stuff all at once, or guess what? They'll zone out, forget it all. That's pretty much it.
Yep, that's it.
Next segment, time for the latest in EdTech updates.
I just
Um,
imagine that the 7 people watching this, well, I guess I'm one of those. So the 6 people watching this are laughing along with us.
Make sure you put in the comments how much you enjoyed that section. That's we'll be returning that every month. You can look forward to that and let us know what you want us to discuss next time in the next edition of Jargon Buster. which will have a more exciting theme tune with explosions and stuff next time, I promise.
Michael Bay.
Absolutely. So let's jump into EdTech updates. And I think the first one is a bit of an interesting observation you made, Heidi, that actually I confess I totally missed.
Yes. So a good L&D BFF of mine sent me the new Articulate Rise AI plugin feature, whatever it's being called, panel that has Astronaut Kitty, right? And they said, why did Articulate pick this silly photo as their like generated photo? And I went, I've seen Astronaut Kitty before. Where have I seen Astronaut Kitty before? And then it dawned on me that I had seen it the day before in Canva with their AI plugins. So what does that tell me? That tells me that all of these little products that we are using in learning and development are using the same plugins, the same APIs probably for the same products that we've probably already got open in new tabs, right? ChatGPT, Midjourney, whatever it is, whether it's audio, video, text, what have you. But the same Astronaut Kitty showed up in both Canva and Articulate, which tells me that they're just using the same old code kits, plugins, APIs, whatever it is that they're using to add this lovely layer of AI that, again, we could all open in new tab to the right and charging for it, which is fantastic for us as end users, right?
I think the thing that you're missing is that according to the Articulate What's New website, this will allow us to create course content up to 9 times faster with Articulate AI.
9 times faster than what?
I mean, don't concern yourself with information like that. That's irrelevant. You don't ask those questions. You just get excited and hand over your money. Those are
9 times faster than the instructional designer who didn't use AI, who had the worst learning design ever.
Yes, faster than them. There we go.
Okay.
No, but the interesting thing there, setting aside the obviously ridiculous claim that's not going to be substantiated by anything, we're talking about speed again.
Yeah.
We're not talking about creating more effective work, more personalized, more easily localized. No, just faster.
But can we just acknowledge what that means is that we're not working fast enough? And maybe it's not so much AI as like, maybe we just need to look at the tools that we are using and use different ones. Maybe it's time, like, you know, maybe something that's 20 years old could finally be retired. I know I keep trying to single-handedly slay SCORM, and I'm just not strong enough to do it myself. Like, it's very much a David and Goliath thing here, but like, I'm just gonna keep trying.
It does strike me as I had a very interesting conversation this week with a client who said they couldn't not produce SCORM content because they needed the data. It was like,
what data?
Well, this was the conversation, right? But we need to know who completed it and when and how long it took them, and we pull through their notes. It's like, so are you familiar with the concept of a website that does all of this without SCORM?
What do you mean a website? Like a Google? Like a google.com?
This is it. Like, there's this thing called the internet, right? And when it came out, we decided that we were going to make information available, but that in exchange for that being freely available, we were going to basically hoover up everyone's data. And what that means is it is in fact possible to collect information without SCORM. It's incredible. But I'm obviously slightly exaggerating.
Of
though
course.
not by much. Any clients who do watch this will go, yep, that's pretty much how Tom talks to us.
And listen, the tone is appreciated. The tone is appreciated here. Because, listen, I mean, it's just, people I just posted the other day about trying to end SCORM. And the biggest argument in the comments was that SCORM is portable. It's a portable file type. And I said, you know what's even more portable? .pdf, .mp3, .mp4, .png. Am I living in an alternate world where like someone else knows something that I don't. Like, what am I missing
Again,
here?
look to the rest of the internet. Like HTML,
Yes.
CSS, and JavaScript are universal languages that we use for everything. Why,
Yes.
and we say, oh, if SCORM was, this is the way I view it. If SCORM was so great, other areas of the world would be using it, not just L&D.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, it is truly, truly bizarre, our attachment to it. But I feel like that is largely driven by, and I will soften my usual vendor related stance here ever so slightly, because there's a bit of a vicious cycle going on. Ultimately, it's going to be a vendor decision to kill this, same as it eventually was with Flash. That's
Absolutely.
the only way
Mhm.
it will happen. However, the first vendor that does it is going to die because they will lose
Sure.
all of their customers, or almost all of their customers. So
Sure.
I do feel for whichever vendor eventually stands up and does the right thing. It's also my reason to fear that no one ever will. Um, because
Yeah,
like
it's
Adobe
valid.
could kill Flash because what, you're going to leave Adobe? All right, then try. A bit
Mm.
like at the minute where everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to leave Adobe." It's like, no, you're not. Why?
Right.
This is
Exactly. Mhm.
Adobe. Like they have the best version of all the software they sell, and it's used by everyone else. Like, come on, let's
Except
just be
maybe
angry about it
Captivate.
and move on. Okay, yeah, that's yeah. I
But
have a
that's why
video coming out
Captivate
this
is
week.
so unloved.
Well,
It's
this
like
is
the
it. Yeah.
most unloved authoring tool, the poor thing.
No, yeah. Watch the channel this weekend. I have a video coming out
Yes.
called "In the Defense of Adobe." So that's going to
Ooh.
be probably my most hated video ever, but it is honest, I think. Um, Not particularly L&D related, but I feel like we tangentially use a lot of Adobe products, so I feel like it's worth us being
Yeah,
part of the
of course.
conversation. Um, but back to these updates then, it is quite notable, I agree, that this AI stuff is very all the same, but it's also been prioritized, and this is where I have slightly less understanding towards specifically the product teams involved.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can
Mhm.
do this now, having been a product manager. Like, what the fuck are you doing prioritizing AI assistance over? And this is on the articulate roadmap. In fact, it's the first thing on the roadmap page. Accessibility checker. Improve the accessibility of your content. Get actionable feedback based on key WCAG guidelines to instantly identify barriers like missing closed captions and disabled course playback speeds. How have you prioritized making funny pictures of cats over that feature? That feature I would pay more for. The AI assistant I really couldn't care less about. Oh,
Yeah, I'm
I just
wondering if it's not a like it's that disparity when you go from manager to director. At least here. I don't know if
mm,
it's similar. But
mm,
like in the US when you go from like the first level manager to anything above, the above just has no idea about the day-to-day work, right?
yeah.
And they shouldn't, right? Like a good director, a good VP is not that far in the weeds or else they're a micromanager. But they see this stuff and they hear this stuff and they get all Shark Tank about it and they're like, oh, 9 times faster. Like we just had to lay off 2 people. We could really use this. And they just kind of are not seeing, not talking to their teams or not talking to the manager and just going kind of gung ho. And I saw this a lot when I was working for a founder who was building a mobile LMS. And it was like this, a lot of people don't know this about me. Like I helped kind of inform this product in the very beginning and then kind of walked away because I saw that they were trying to sell it only to CEOs and only to CLOs. And it was very like they weren't getting anywhere because like those at that level, people were like, oh, this is cool, but we're not the decision makers. And so I feel like sometimes these products are geared towards the, oh, this is cool, and then not as much toward the decision makers. But then when you've got, companies that are so well established, they can kind of afford to do that.
This is it, and I must admit, like, I kind of wonder how much pressure they've got from the venture capital investory side of the world. Because
Sure.
if you like way back, I think possibly in the last couple of the former ID updates, me and Joey were talking about the amount of money coming into the EdTech space on the kind of tail end of COVID, I think, when people realized there's a lot of money to be made here potentially.
Yeah.
And I wonder if now the pressure is, well, it died off. Weirdly, we came out of COVID and went, you know what would be great? What? Training room activities. Let's do some more of those again. And we started to swing back to in person, right? And I wonder if, as they saw that happening and AI coming in, they went, right, that's how we pull people back or how we
Yeah.
make more money. But it's a bad way to design a product.
It is. And I've seen a lot of LMSs start to incorporate it as well into content
Yeah.
creation. And even if they don't have like an embedded authoring tool and things like that. And it's, it really is to your point about, I made a post, are LMS companies okay? Because the other thing is they're trying to capitalize on this, like, who can we collaborate with? Like, you see every webinar, every, like every panel, every thing that's 1 hour that's on LinkedIn is sponsored by an LMS now. And I think there's a lot of competition because an LMS is just like any product, right? Like anyone can build it. Anyone. All you need to do is know how to use code, right? You could build an LMS. So I think there's like a lot of competition, especially to your point about like post-COVID, and there was an uptick in popularity, and especially virtual or mobile training platforms. And then I think, you just have a lot of people adopting other tools and other methods of delivering content. Like a lot of companies don't need an LMS anymore. They're using other things. They're using the intranet. They're using a CMS. They're sharing a knowledge base. They're, finding other places for learning to live. And I think the LMS companies are starting to kind of feel this. And maybe the first one to ditch SCORM won't die. Maybe it will be kind of the first one to flip and be more of a CMS, for lack of a better term, for learning.
I think the thing there is they're going to have to, and I think there are a couple of platform companies out there that I'm seeing the spark of this in, is they are genuinely saying, okay, this is not working. There is no more forward movement on the path that we're all on right now, or at least the forward movement that's available it appears to be forward movement. In actual fact, it's just spinning in a nice big circle. And I'm starting to see elements of, so how do we move away from the idea of we house your content and you report on it? How do we become more useful? But it's early days. I think it'll be interesting to see which one of those really embrace that and which ones of those go, no, this is how we do things in the LMS space, and here we are. Cool.
And I think we would have seen this same kind of thing with like the AR VR, but it's not as easy, right? Like it's not as easy to put a VR layer on all of your stuff, right? Like AI is just there, right? Like it's already out there. The tools are already available. So it's very easy to integrate it. Like I think we would have seen a very similar trend when everything was AR VR, if it was just as accessible.
No, I agree with you there. I think it's because I think the technology again is it has so much potential, but the costs involved are just so the costs are large comparatively speaking. I think you could argue that they're so effective you can overcome the cost, but actually just the practicality of getting headsets on people. And I know you can put it on a screen, but it's not the same. You lose a lot when you put it on a screen. So I think it was kind of the practicality alongside it already being an expensive shift to me that really damped VR. It's still alive. There are still some really great vendors in the space, but it's never. Oh, I don't think it's ever going to be commonplace, as it were. It's just too difficult. So let's move on to what I think is going to be my favorite segment of the new show, which is Big Talk, Small Print. So Big Talk, Small Print.
So first of all, explain what Big Talk, Small Print means.
Well, the idea behind Big Talk, Small Print, and we would love suggestions from all of you over the next month about what we should maybe put into this section, is we're going to find someone or a company or something going on in our space making some very large claims, perhaps with very small or very non-existent forms of evidence to back their claims. And this month, Heidi, you, I think, found a really good one for us to talk about, because since you first mentioned it to me, I've seen so much conversation about it on LinkedIn.
Same, same.
Predominantly of people saying about how excited they are about it, which upset me more than I thought it might when I saw it, I'll be honest.
I
So why don't
know,
you talk
me
to us
too.
about who or what we're talking about here?
Okay, so a friend sent me this LinkedIn post, and it is announcing the launch in early 2025 of what is called Arist Teammate. And it is called the world's first AI teammate for learning and development teams. Now, I'm taking text directly from the promo video here. Let me just read a little bit to you real quick and let you just take it in. It puts the power of an entire L&D team at your fingertips, from needs analysis to full program delivery. Then in this promo video, the founder uses his voice to prompt a chat that comes up on the screen and looks strikingly familiar to the ChatGPT interface, but not quite. And says, "Hey teammate, I'm a commercial leader at," I'm not going to say the company, "meaning I train thousands of sales reps as new drugs come to market. We're gearing up for a big launch with," I'm going to omit the drug name here, "so I need to figure out what our reps need to know, what skills they need to have, and what their current knowledge gaps are." That is the end of the prompt. I just want to put that big period right there. So then he says, "Right now, Teammate is interviewing our top medical experts, interviewing our top sales reps, and ingesting thousands of documents we've uploaded, all to create a needs analysis to tell us exactly what people need to learn. As you know, we have about 5,000 sales reps across 60 teams in 30 different languages, so please customize and translate these courses for every single team as well." Teammate is now going to customize and translate all these courses. They're going, well, now I'm paraphrasing. They're going to run it by legal and the SMEs, of course. And then once approved, it will automatically push all the learning to the places that your employees check the most. And the icons on screen are Slack, WhatsApp, Teams, and Facebook Messenger. And then it will send a report once everything has been done. Oh, and it also claims to be waged hour compliant, meaning they can reach frontline team members at no extra cost. Teammate is also backed, this is again quoting directly from the promo video, Teammate is also backed by years of performance and learning research. With Teammate, global learning programs that used to take dozens of people, hundreds of hours, and millions of dollars can now be built in under an hour at no extra cost, making even the most complex learning organizations dramatically faster and more effective. Here's to putting a world-class learning team in everyone's back pocket. Now, their website says that they are the, quote, first AI employee for L&D teams, Teammate, and that it handles everything: needs analysis, SME interviews, consulting, creation, iteration, delivery, data analysis, and more. Where to begin, Tom?
Well, first, I mean, the one that, like, obviously, their website will be full of the L&D experts that they've got involved in the development of this product, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I saw 0 pictures.
Cool. That's exciting. So they've worked with some of the most experienced people in the space. I like that. They're just invisible people. Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is interesting because a little while ago I tried out Sintra or Sintra X. I'm not sure what the X stands for. It's very exciting. When in doubt, if you want to rebrand anything that you do, just put an X at the end. Everyone goes, ooh.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And that was this whole thing. It was, it's a team of AI employees, blah, blah, blah. It was a group of slightly optimized chat GPTs. It's fine. It's like, oh, this one specifically writes LinkedIn posts. This one specifically writes marketing focused ebooks. What, it's kind of like a pre-prompted chat GPT.
Sure. Makes
But
sense.
they made their marketing was quite slick and quite fun. But once you actually dug into it, they made very sensible claims. What's it
Sure.
do? It writes LinkedIn posts. Like, what do you want? Like, it writes them pretty well. That
Yeah.
yeah, and it does. In fairness to them, like, I cannot write good LinkedIn posts because I like to use like 200 words when 10 will do. Um, so
Yeah.
that doesn't work on social media. So it's really helpful. This is making some insane claims. I think the interviewing SME ones, it's a really interesting concept. I don't see how that is gonna work. I've got a horrible feeling that what it's going to do is send a whole series of text questions and expect an SME to respond in like written prose when we all know SMEs are already like, yeah, I have no time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so can
Like,
I give you this or that? No,
they're
no.
going to be, how do I close this damn chat bot that keeps popping up on my screen? They're going to be emailing IT going, I keep getting this stupid chat bot.
I did a whole talk on, and there's a video on the channel that talk about how that human relationship between L&D professionals and their SMEs is so vitally important because
Critical.
when it breaks down, we can't do our job.
Critical. Yeah.
This feels like a way to kill that relationship.
Absolutely. And I've done research, you granted
Ooh.
small scale, right? Like I did research on SMEs. I interviewed instructional designers about working with SMEs. I did it very similarly to my dissertation research, where I asked them to tell me a story about a bad relationship with a SME and tell me a story about a good relationship. Then I pulled the themes and compared them. And by and large, the bad situations were because of some kind of miscommunication, or the SME didn't feel heard. You want to know a really great way to make your SMEs not feel heard? Throw a chatbot at them. Throw an
This
asynchronous form at them for their review.
this comes across as the same argument around SEOs, CEOs creating digital avatars of themselves and then sending out videos to their people, thinking I can now communicate with people more often. No, what you're telling them is I'm using this avatar because you are not worth my time. Because sitting
Yes.
down and recording this 2-minute video is not worth it for me because I'm in charge. And I feel like we are getting very excited about the potential efficiencies in this technology and forgetting that some things shouldn't be efficiency first.
Well, and
It's
some things shouldn't be like AI is not meant to be an employee, right? I take
yeah.
issue with them even calling AI an employee. That is a line for me that we don't cross, right? Because then we get into like that. And I know Ross Stevenson talks about this quite a bit of like, do you have to say that you used AI for everything that you use AI to help with? And it's like, well, do you say that you used Google or Word or like whatever tool you're using? It is a tool. It is not a team member. It is not a human. And when we start saying, well, this is your new L&D team member, you're going to scare a lot of people who are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs.
And I think it's worth noting that in a lot of organizations, L&D isn't exactly working and starting from a position of high trust.
Correct.
Like, and that is, as an industry, I'm using a broad brush here, but as an industry, we have not done a great job of earning a lot of people's trust in a lot of organizations.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
have, we are often the function that brings in bad technological choices or spends a lot of money and then fails to really deliver the return that we promised, or totally fail to measure any return because it might not give us good numbers. It's this feels like a way of very quickly killing the opportunities AI does bring to L&D by trying to
Yes.
reach way too far.
Well,
But
and even just this ingesting thousands of documents that we've uploaded, how realistic is it for your organization that you all are going to upload the thousands of documents, get the information from your experts, get the information from the people doing the job. This is our whole problem in the first place, right? So, like, we're saying, oh, we can fix your problem, and pretending that the problem is already fixed and then providing a solution, which is where I have a problem with this entire sales pitch.
Mm. I think, yeah, it's this feels bad. It
It
also feels like
does.
they're going to make a huge amount of money.
Oh
Is is
yeah,
is the other
the
sad reality?
comments on this LinkedIn post, and you know what I noticed though, as I was kind of like, I scrolled through them. I didn't, analyze them with research glasses on, but a lot of them were like CLO level, right? The people who I was talking about earlier would go, "Ooh, cool! I could stand to save some money on my L&D team," and don't really understand that like this isn't like, I'm sorry, this isn't possible. This is, if you do Dr. Phil's experiment with this and you'd put teammate versus instructional designer with no AI versus instructional designer with AI, I think teammate would probably get similar feedback to our poor instructional designer.
It would be very interesting to get hold of it and run that same
Right.
test, I think, because again, I think that quality of information piece is a big assumption. We've always said kind of crap in, crap out with AI, except it's amplified. This is going to be that on steroids, I feel.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like
Absolutely. And I guess I have a really big problem with the fact that like the only thing that you're shown is the chat GPT interface and then just all the hype building, right? Like join our wait list. We're only letting a select few people try this. Like, come on.
yeah,
I'm
if
tired.
the product worked, you'd be selling it.
Exactly.
That's
It'd
the
sell itself, right? If it
having
really,
been on the flip side of this. If there's a wait list, it means the thing ain't built yet.
right.
That's what that is
Right.
right there.
And they just want to make sure before they spend all the time building it that it's actually going to be fruitful. And in
Because
this
now
case,
they're the first now. They get to
yeah,
be the first to market without actually having the product ready.
yes, exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah. And
oh dear.
yeah, the first AI employee. Good luck. Good luck to you.
Well, with that wonderful and uplifting message in mind, I just want to touch the fact that we're going to have a section towards the end of the show called the mailbag. Um, So we'd love your comments throughout the show that we can then go back through. I can see we do have a few. I say comments. You can also ask questions if there's something you want to hear. Realistically, probably Heidi and not me pontificate on. Everyone hears enough from me already. So there's one here. I've got a few horror stories of the Peter principle rearing its ugly head in L&D jobs. Someone who made a good document once and are now in charge of L&D. I think we've all met that L&D leader.
Yes.
Like that's pretty commonplace. I think it's an interesting where we're one of those weird fields where we either seem to get leaders who have no background in L&D, which actually I have slightly more time for because I think they if you're a genuinely good leader, genuinely good, then you can lead the function, advocate for your people, and learn what you need to learn because you're not a trainer, you're not an instruction designer, you're a senior leader. That's kind of fine. I actually have more of an issue with the people who kind of jump very rapidly from an instructional design or kind of practitioner level role, skip the line management, middle management bit, straight into senior roles. And it's not a gripe with them, it's a gripe with the business because the business will then just assume overnight you've developed the skills of a senior leader, um, which do not come naturally to anyone because they're not
No,
normal person skills.
they're not.
Like,
They're really not.
you know, there's a reason so many C-suite people are psychopaths. Like they're not, it it's just it's a very different world to exist in where politics and positioning and that sort of stuff are they your whole job. Part of your job is now to protect a downward department when stuff goes wrong, which
Yeah.
means taking it on yourself quite often. That is not normal, but human behavior is to avoid harm and danger for yourself, to make sure you're not at risk of being shouted at in the boardroom or whatever. You can't
Yeah.
do that in that position. You have to wade face first into it and go bring it. It's a very weird world. And I don't
Yeah.
think many people get the preparation they need when they move into it for the first time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think that's very true. I think, I think it's hit or miss with the managers that come from outside. Like I've
mm,
had really great ones. Like my former boss Mario came from product, and like yeah, he's worked on Ellen like teams with instructional design. Now this is in customer education, so it's slightly different. But he's worked on teams with instructional designers and trainers and helped create all that content for a really long time. But he took the time to learn what it was all about, you know?
absolutely. No, this is it. Um, so with that, in the form of all news shows, we're gonna finish up with the segment called "We Leave You With." This is like the in other news, where the news, having just told you that people died in a train crash and this war's going on, then go, and then this dog was seen playing in this shop. And isn't that a lovely way to end the news? Isn't the world a functioning
Exactly.
place after all?
Yes.
No one cried till the cameras have stopped. Um, on that note, I'm basically spending the rest of the freaking year going to events. So
Yay!
I'll be at the Talent Gathering in Edinburgh, the Accessibility Mastery Day, also in Edinburgh. Going to Scotland twice, that's going to be exciting. Getting blue face paint and a big sword on, that'll be very good.
Yeah.
World of Learning in Birmingham, Future of Learning in London, DevLearn in Vegas. I got some tickets. Woo! I get to go.
Woo!
And thank you, by the way, to eLearning Brothers for sorting me out some tickets. You are amazing. And then, of course, we wrap out the year with Learning Network Connect, which
Very
obviously
exciting.
all of you, and I can see most of you are based in the States, you're going to fly over for.
Yes.
So come on over. Um, if you do see me in an event, come and say hello and get a free sticker. I've got loads of Never Trust a Pyramid stickers on me. I was going to try and design some new ones for this year, but the year has escaped, so it's still Never Trust a Pyramid. Um, but yeah, come and say hello. It'd be lovely to see you all. Heidi, over to you for your We
Yes.
Leave You With.
I leave you with just well, you mentioned it earlier, but I just started last week a new community called the Useful L&D community. And it, unlike some of the other communities in L&D that are fantastic, excuse me, is broad, completely L&D, like doesn't matter what, if you're an aspiring L&D professional, if you're already in, if you're a senior level leader, we've got all sorts of people. We've already got over 130 members in just a week. And we're already starting to have conversations. We had our first monthly meetup today. So if you want to talk about things that go a little bit deeper than your best friend AI L&D teammate, come join us. And you can find the link on my LinkedIn page. So
Fantastic. Well, you'll also find the link in the description of this live stream. Please
oh
check it
yeah,
out. You
that's
can
right.
go straight from there. But with that, we'd like to thank you all for joining us for our first episode of the new ID update. We have slipped slightly over an hour, but not by too far. So thank you for sticking with us. We would love your feedback. Let us know in the comments what you think. Obviously, share this with all your friends, AI or otherwise, so that they can watch it, transcribe it, and use it to train their models. And that that horrific view of the future aside, we will see you.
Dystopian.
We will see you at the end of next month, last Friday of every month. I won't do the Batman sign off. Um, we'll see you all later.